Welcome into the latest episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This episode will be covering the Ligue 1, the France top soccer league. Down to 18 teams. Starting this podcast, probably the latest I've ever started one, if you don't count what I was doing in Italy last year. But it is 1:26 Central Time here in Dallas, Texas, and I will be riding you through each of the teams getting ready because we have only a couple days. La Liga literally in Spain starts tomorrow. So we saw the Kylian Mbappe played today, but not for Paris Saint-Germain. And we'll go through each team, come through with some sort of best bet end of show, give an idea of kind of what I'm expecting from each of the teams, especially the three newly promoteds. We'll start there and we'll work our way up and try to get to some lines that are reasonable because PSG looks like a huge favorite yet again. And I'll have some more thoughts for them end of show. But I'll go from bottom of the transfer markets value system all the way higher. And of course, still plenty of potential changes left to go. But we'll see down the line. So starting with Angers, a recent Ligue team that had some big financial problems, including loaning their goalkeeper mid-season to another club that were struggling wild. They're worth only 27.2 million euros according to transfer markets. So a good chance I'm not going to know a lot of these players, and certainly coaching and things have changed since they went down. Alexandre Dejou, appointed in March of 2023. Looks like they have some ability sticking around. They've sold $474,000 worth of players. Jan Valery to Sheffield Wednesday in the English Championship, I believe. Sub 500K euros, not a lot there. Free transfers, they brought in Ahalou from Strasbourg, defensive midfielder. And the rest of the names on here look like free transfers. They're all free transfers. So basically, Angers are broke. Can't expect too much from this team. Going to take a while for me to learn exactly who these players are. I see Ibrahima Niane is still around, so I think he was at Metz the last time I was really following along. Levina came in from Clermont Foot, who were relegated, and I don't really even know what to expect with this side. Some names we've seen before, especially if you follow the French league. One of my favorite leagues out there, and reminds me I need to probably upgrade so I actually get Ligue 1 this season. Locally, I'd actually watch it on the television instead of my phone for 38 match days or 34 match days. There's only 18 teams. But sheesh, Angers look like they are potentially the best case for relegation at such a low valuation, plus 140 to be relegated at Bet Online. All lines quoted in this podcast, and all in Betting the Pitch are followed or quoted courtesy of Bet Online. It's at SportsBetting.ag. If you don't have an account at either of those places, go sign up. Links are in the podcast descriptions on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We'll move next to, I guess, a little bit more wealthy of a side. We'll go to Angers, another recent promotion. I guess I'll go through all three of them. They are worth slightly more than Angers, about 7 million euros more. Angers were in the league a couple seasons ago, came right back, so that's a good sign for continuity. Christophe Pellissier is a manager that I've recognized. I don't know that he was at Angers before. He's actually appointed in 2022, so it's a good chance he was actually around. Let's see, where has he managed? While that's loading, they did buy a player for 4 million euros. So hello, some expenditures, actually two players at that, a right midfielder and a center forward from FC Nordsjælland, the right midfielder Lasso Koulibaly, and Motherwell Football Club, which doesn't sound like a real place, but and then Gabriel Osho coming in from Luton Town, also on a free transfer, center back. So that's interesting to me. That's a name we know, and I do wonder why a 26-year-old is fleeing the I guess the championship to come to France, especially being English and Nigerian Gabriel Osho. But I guess sometimes the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. Pellissier, so he's been at Lorient previously. That's where I recognize him from, but then went straight to Angers and has been there since. It looks like he did take them up, so that's a good sign. In terms of the rest of the squad, I can't say I know too much about it. And to be relegated, they are actually third most likely at plus 185, actually ahead of a team worth more that stuck around last season. We'll move next to Saint-Etienne, who are worth 37.5 million euros, 10 million more and then some than Angers, about three and a half more than Angers, and they are one of the most historic clubs in Ligue 1. Won the relegation playoff or promotion playoff from their perspective or point of view, and it's a big deal for them to come up. I'm actually wearing their hated rivals shirt, practice shirt or something like that from years ago that just didn't have the Honda logo on it. Thank God. That's one thing about soccer kits or things that make me buy practice uniforms, because I guess they're now branded with a ton of advertisements as well. But when I look at Saint Etienne, they were kind of a surprise to get through Metz, who were a really talented team and one of the best. I mean, had one of the leading goal scorers, I think maybe even Ballon d'Or in the Euros this summer, but were able to get through that matchup. Good for them, and probably better for, I think, the prestige of French football. But Saint Etienne have had some big financial problems, and that's why they got relegated. But Olivier Dall'Olio was appointed in 2023. So he's been around for a little while. That's good news. Looks like he's a contract through the end of this season. And they spent a little bit of money coming in, 12 million euros, that is, on Zuriko Davidashvili from Bordeaux, as everyone has fled that other historic club that's not been in the top flight in France. Also, Igor Miladanovic, and he was 3 million euros. Augustin Boake, Football Club Kukariki, and then Wolfsburger AC, which I believe is in Austria, I think. Also, Yunus Abdelhamid, former captain of Stade de Reims, coming in. That's a big deal. His age probably played a role in this. But sure, retire with a big club that you can put your name on, stamp on, and when eventually Saint Etienne get a lot of respect in the future, you can put it on your CV, as they would call it in Europe. Saint Etienne, 2-1 odds to be relegated, so fourth most likely according to odds makers. And I mean, it's interesting to see them bring in a pretty unknown Georgian, I would say. I've definitely followed, and anyone who followed at the _G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube throughout this entire European campaign definitely saw my interest in backing the Georgian national team. But Davidashvili, I don't really know very well. 23 years old does help, but I mean, I knew about Fedorskyria before he even moved to Napoli, and plenty others in that squad as well, alongside Georges Mikotadze, who is going to be coming up later in this episode. But when I look at Saint Etienne, I mean, the history's there. We'll see what that actually turns into. They got some names in their squad. Florian Tardieu, 32 years old. He's in the squad. Monconduit is around, Apia, I mean, Macron. There's a lot of names here. Of course, Abdelhamid is probably, 36 years old. We'll see what they get out of him as center back, but probably important and probably plays a role. We'll see. Gauthier Lossoneux, 27-year-old goalkeeper, also probably plays a big role, and he'll look like he's sticking around at the Le Verde, I believe, as Saint Etienne are known. And I'm very interested to see kind of what they do, because unfortunately they are certainly in peril, one of the lower valued squads. Maybe they do some more business coming down the line, but sheesh, there's a big gap between them and Le Havre, who are actually second most likely to be relegated, despite being nearly double the valuation of Saint Etienne, nearly even more, less than double Saint Etienne, but about double Angers and closer to triple Angers. So if you believe the transfer market values like I do, that's a big deal, I think. When I look at Le Havre, so they were a team I was backing for a ton of last season, really based on their defense. They had trouble scoring for sure, and were definitely a good thing to bet against trying to score goals. But they were really, really, really great defensively, and that's what brought them up from Ligue 2. I'd heard one of the Ligue 1 broadcasts last year saying they were a really good offensive team, and they turned into a defensive one in Ligue 1, like a lot of teams tend to do when they're promoted. That was not the case whatsoever. They were great at defense, and honestly, that's what put them in a great position, though they did kind of have to hold on for dear life towards the end. In comes Didier Degas, their manager, who I think was at Nice, and had a really good run until that kind of fizzled. They've done no business, it looks like, or at least no fee business that transfer market has tracked. So a lot of free transfers coming in, and some's leaving, including Andre Ayew, who you might especially know his brother from Crystal Palace days in the Premier League. But Andre Ayew, big name, I believe played for Ghana, I want to say. He's gone. Other names I don't really recognize that have left. So it seems like a very similar squad. I don't really like them second most likely to be relegated. I feel like they're going to get back to that same type of style, score as many goals as possible, but really try to stay in the league based on defense. That certainly plays well to my strategy of unders and underdogs. And I really like seeing like Usama Targalin. We'll see how them they keep him. Yasin Kekta as well. Both 22-year-olds worth more than $2 million, both of them. Taylor Kuzyaev from Russia is getting old, but certainly plays a big role in the midfield. And Loic Nego, Hungarian, who I guess was pretty disappointing. The Hungarians were in the Euro this summer, but I really liked him. Gautier Loris, I think the brother of the famous goalkeeper that was playing for Tottenham Hotspur. So there's a lot here. I'm not so worried about Le Havre getting relegated, and I hope they're lined like it for a lot of this season. Move next to Stade Brestois. They're worth 20 million more euros than Le Havre, right about 84.5 million euros. They had an incredible run last season and do have European commitments. So that's especially scary to see them at such a low squad value, having to potentially like balance the two competitions. They should be focused on staying in the league, but that's a big question. They've sold 600,000 euros worth of players and only spent 1.7 million euros. So that is not a great sign, though Eric Roy has stayed as manager, has an extension to 2025. We'll see what he does. But in terms of looking at what has moved on, Lilian Brassier has center back on loan to Marseille. Steve Mounier, center forward, on a free transfer to Football Club Augsburg in Germany. Karamoko Dembele, I don't know that name very well. It looks like he is at Queen's Park Rangers. Arconte Lebeau, I don't know those names very well. But on loan, Ludovic Ajorc, who came back from Strasbourg and was playing for Mainz and not really playing much. Abdoulaye Ndiaye from Estactois. On loan, Julien Le Cardinal from Lens, and Jordan Amavi, who we've heard has been playing all over France for a long, long time. Those are not a lot of big splashes, though, and I'm pretty sure I got to see. I mean, the last time I looked at this live was that unfortunately the fixtures weren't reflected because they weren't really scheduled. That might be the case for Stade Brestois as well. But let's see if there's a way maybe I can see this at some point. Maybe there's some announcements. Of course not. So I'll put it that way. Stade Brestois, I mean, they were literally at the top of the table last season in France. So let's see what they finished in Ligue last year. Come on, baby. Do this for me. Standings. There we go. So they were in 2023-24. They finished third. So they should be in a Champions League spot. That's scary. And an automatic qualification to Champions League as well. Even more scary. Sheesh. I don't know how that's going to go. I don't think it's going to go well, especially being the lowest squad values in all of Europe. Maybe they're just waiting to spend, or they will spend in January when things are desperate, but that's not the time you want to buy things. I'll put it that way. Moving now, and by the way, anyone watching live, I can imagine you are at this hour, 1:39 now, local time. I do have the comments available, so if you are on and watching and want to hear me specifically get into something deeper about a French Ligue club, I'm happy to do it. But if not, I'll just press on to Toulouse, who somehow survived, stayed in the league, though it looked really scary for a while last season. They played Europa League. I think they even beat Liverpool, I want to say, at one point last season. Well, they're worth 86 million euros, 2 more million than Stade Brestois, and there's a big chasm between the newly promoteds and who were in the league last year. But I guess we'll have to say, and just to give an idea before I move on, I guess fully from Stade Brestois, they are 10-1 odds to be relegated. That seems pretty steep for a team that's been fighting relegation, then had a suddenly very good year and have to balance playing Champions League with a very limited roster, to say the least, unless we're just believers in Stade Brestois at this point. They were great underdogs for a long time, but were big favorites a lot of last year. That might have been lightning in a bottle. We'll see if they can keep that going. I'll move next to, as I said, Toulouse. They're 86 million euros in value, and they're actually plus 650 to be relegated. So that's pretty far ways down. Eventually, I'll climb up to trying to figure out who I feel like has a good chance of finishing higher in the table. But really, we're starting at the bottom and starting with who I think might be relegated. Let's see. top three finish might come up. That's a guaranteed Champions League place, and then that's probably where we'll be. I guess at that point later in the show. But Toulouse, they had this incredible season, won the Coupe de France, and basically got an automatic bid. They did. To Europa League. Carlos Martinez was an assistant manager and stepped into the main role. He's still there with no reporting on when the contract expires, which is interesting. They've sold 36 million euros worth of players and only bought 4.5. That's not a great sign. Sold Thijs de Linga to Bologna as they're trying to restock a team that kind of fled for the hills. Christian Mavisa has left for Monaco. Velko Bermancevic to Sparta Prague. Low price there, but still seems a little interesting to be dropping to a Czech league. Anthony Royot was at at Stuttgart last season, and then they even had I guess Mikel Dessler, right back, moving on a free transfer to Austin FC. Very close to my heart as a UT grad, but I guess I just remember him getting red cards. Really, they did buy Charlie Cresswell, 4.5 million euro center back from Leeds, and Jibril Sidibe coming in from AEK as well. Free transfer from Athens is a name that's certainly known across European football, at least the leagues that I follow. Big questions: how do they replace the goals they lost at Dalinga? I don't know how they're going to do that necessarily. Zakaria Abdulklal hopefully will be a lot healthier this season. The Moroccan right winger that should be a really good talent for them. They still have plenty of players that I guess they've been able to maintain or keep around. Big questions on what they're going to look like, but I mean, continuity with the manager sticking around and a team that's going to have to replace their star goal scorer was a big question, as well as center back in Mavisa. But at this point, I mean, the losses seem like not the biggest ones to think of. So maybe that's a good thing for Toulouse, though. They're certainly relying on the squad value difference. Move next to Nantes. They're 88 million euros worth. And one of the other really big traditional clubs in France. They really struggled to stay in the league last season, but were able to do it. They brought in their previous Coupe de France winning manager just a couple of seasons ago in Antoine Comboire. He's still around. Looks like after a late March appointment, mid-March last season, almost the Ides of March, in order to keep the team in the league. But looking at their prices to be relegated, Nantes are plus 275, which makes them tied for fifth most likely to be relegated. That's scary, considering, but also doesn't really fit how much these squad values are really worth. In terms of what they've done in business, they've brought in 6.3 million euros in sales. They spent 10 million, so that's a good sign. All on one player, center forward Mathis Ablin from Stade Rennais. They've also brought in Le Penant on loan from Olympique Lyonnais, as I wear the shirt. If you're watching live or watching the video version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube, please leave a 5-star review for an Apple Podcast or on Spotify. It's huge for the search rankings and will convince me to do more of these episodes and probably even spend more time. Sorbo Thomas coming in, looks like from Birmingham. Nope. From Huddersfield Town, excuse me, on loan. And Tino Kadewere, who's been all over the place. He's, I guess, technically owned his rights by Lyon, as I wear the shirt. But he's been all over the place, and I think previously came from Nantes as well. In terms of departure, Junior Diaz, center back to Estac-Trois. I don't know where they paid 2.5 million euros for him. Not a name I know very well. Moussa Sissoko has gone back to Watford. He had a good start to the season, but then when things kind of got out of hand, maybe that was enough for him to leave. Mustafa Mohamed is still around. The Egyptian Le Penant, I think, is a really great loan transfer because, I mean, he was playing for France's Olympic side all the way to the finals from what I was watching. Florent Mollet, back, certainly a midfielder, but plays on the wing at times, can certainly create. Fabien Centons back from Hellas Verona. In Italy, I mean, there's some talent here. I wouldn't be so worried. I mean, Alban Lafont, kind of surprised he's still goalkeeping at Nantes, worth 9 million euros. Certainly will help more than hurt, at least as much as the goalkeeper can. I like them. I'm not so worried about them being relegated. So they've been flirting with it for years. Welcome to Late Night with the Real _G Warner. The Yawns are back. I don't see a reason why the numbers are this low, but I think that's telling you that there's a lot of teams that are up for relegation, possibly in France, despite really big squad value differences. Moving next to Montpellier, they're worth almost 91.5 million euros. That makes them worth about triple Alger at the bottom. And that's a big deal because squad values, I think, do tell a lot about who these teams can and will be. They've had some ups and downs in the past. They're great at scoring goals, just not great at defending them. And then they brought in a manager who finally defended, and Michel Desakharian, who had been all over before, all over Ligue 1. He's got a contract through the end of this season. That usually doesn't mean much, but they've only sold players so far, brought in 12 million euros. Massine Esteve, he'd left for Burnley, I think, midway through last season. So they just capitalized on that buy. Leo Leroy has left for, looks like, Basel in Switzerland for 500,000 euros. And then not really much has been done. Sacha Delay has left as well in a free transfer, but seems like a very similar team that we've been seeing before. Big questions, I guess, is what can they do with Wabi Kazri, who's now 33 years old? And then how often can they keep Teji Savanier away from a red card? That's a big deal. Plus, to see what they can get from Jordan Ferry. There's a lot of talent here, but age is the problem. Those three players I just mentioned are 32 or older. We'll see what they can get from Chautard, who's only 22. Sila as well at left back. And then it seems like a pretty thin roster at this point, but Lecomte, I think, is something you can trust in goal. And their backup goalkeeper, Dimitri Patal, has been there for a while. I think there's potentially an argument for their age, but 5-1 to be relegated certainly gives them a lot more credit than a lot of those teams below them. I'll move next to Stade Reims. They're worth over 100 million euros. Still have, still as their manager, and at least as far as I know, I'm going to make sure to confirm that before I get too far away from this. They've only sold. I did see Will still moving on. So Luka Elsner is coming in. He looks like a Slovakian, appointed July 1st. So we'll see what that means to this squad. Stade Reims were awesome under, honestly, I thought they were great under Oscar Garcia, who's managed Celta de Vigo as well. But Luka Elsner has only sold, at least no money has been spent on incoming players. Amir Richardson has been sold to Fiorentina, central midfielder, who was very good, very talented, it seemed to me. Thomas Fouquet has gone on a free transfer. And then to Anderlecht in Belgium, it's kind of a step down. It's interesting. They also got 700,000 euros for right back Ibrahim Diakite to Bruges. They brought in players that I can't say anything about. I don't know much about. So we'll see really what happens. We saw Abdelhamid has already left for Saint Etienne. Juna Ito, very important to see him still around. Also with Nakamura, that Japanese connection. And it feels like to me there's still a lot of good players in this team. Teddy Tumo was a great player in central midfield, kind of a late bloomer in his career. Busi's still around. Akieme, Agbadou, who's a younger playing center back from the Côte d'Ivoire. Seems like this team might be a little thinner, but I don't see problems for them. And ultimately, they are a lot less. Oh, actually, let me see. They're a lot higher to be relegated. Yeah, it looks like 10-1 odds, matching Stade Brestois, but they don't have Champions League commitments. So that does matter quite a bit. We'll go next to Strasbourg Alsace on the west or the eastern portion of France. They had a huge comeback that really kind of relegated Metz late in the season and relegated my pocketbook on that Sunday. I remember it vividly. They are in the Chelsea ownership group. And it's not a great season for them last year, I got to say. Thought with all that money coming in, I think the market believed it as well. It did not go as simply for them, though. So we'll see what happens. Right, as the ads start to play. But Liam Rossignol is now manager after I guess Patrick Vieira tried and failed another place. This is a new appointment, so we'll see what that all looks like. Only came in about 20 days ago, July 25th. So from when this recording, they've spent 18.5 million euros, just exactly what Chelsea do. In terms of what they've lost, Ibrahim Sissoko, a defensive midfielder, free transfer to VfL Bochum. Not really a big loss. Kevin Gamero is not around. He was certainly aging. In terms of what they brought in, Guela Doué, one of the million Doués from Stade Rennais. Paid 6 million euros for him. I don't remember him. I feel like I remember Desire and another one. So I don't know Guela, but there must be another in the long line of Doués from Stade Rennais. Felix Lemarchal from Monaco, Oscar Pereira, Caleb Wiley from Chelsea on loan. What a surprise, American. Also just watched Caleb Wiley get married last weekend. What's up, Caleb? I doubt you're listening, but maybe you cared about football, American too much, and maybe you'll come over to the soccer version. In terms of this squad, I don't know. I've never been that impressed with Strasbourg. They have good crowds, but so do a lot of teams across Europe. They're looking like a minor league AAA type of team. If you're listening to a baseball podcast on the Betting Pitch Podcast Network, that A Brooks bets. Maybe that's what it did. We did go 1-0-1 on this recent podcast, about as best as you can do besides 2-0. We'll see what this turns into for Strasbourg, but I've never been that impressed, and I'm just really hoping they continue to get overpriced for, I guess, being a Chelsea other club. Strasbourg are plus 275 to be relegated, despite being worth nearly 130 million euros. That's a saying of something, but I would love to see exactly how poorly they perform this season. Move next to Racing Club de Lens. They were in the Champions League last year. Now they are about 8th in valuation in Ligue 1 in France, worth nearly 172 million euros, which is a big jump. I mean, the gap double what Nantes, Toulouse, Stade Brestois, Champions League team are worth. So there probably is some movement that will be done there. In terms of Lens and where they are in the relegation spots, they're 25-1, so very large. Actually a top 3 finish, they're a plus 350, so PSG minus 1,500, gigantic, but big number for Lens to potentially finish in a Champions League spot. Their transfer record, so they brought in 31.5 million euros. They also, this is where Will still ended up landing, I guess, after, I mean, I'm surprised that Lens moved on from their previous manager, but he might have gotten a new job, so that's perfectly possible. Will still 31 years old, Englishman, was getting his club fined 22,000 euros per match day for not having been approved as a manager, but managing. He's in to Lens for 2027. We'll see what that looks like. They've sold players and only spent 9 million euros or so, sold about 31.5. So that's not a great sign for a new manager coming in. But that home crowd is incredible. They sold Eli Wahi, their center forward, to Marseille, Buxa, to looks like Michelin in I think Denmark, Morgan Gilavogi to St. Pauli, a newly promoted side in Germany, Julien Le Cardinal, I don't know, center back, and Poreba, small number to Hamburg. In terms of what they brought in, Mbala Nzola, a backup striker who scored a ton of goals, especially from the penalty spot from Fiorentina. He's in on loan. Chavez, I don't know. Malang Sarr, a free transfer center back from Chelsea. Could be a good buy, but don't know that name very well. Not a lot of what they've brought in seems to matter too much. Sotoka still there. Wesley Said. They're both older, probably going to be competing with Mbala and Zola for attacking minutes. Really what Lens were great at before was a high press. New manager comes in, that might change a little bit, but probably those traditions are still around. Frankowski, former Chicago Fire defender, Pole, great and sometimes penalty kick taker, still there. And the youth as well. Spearings has come in from Toulouse. That's I think happened before, I want to say, Stein Spearings, but I guess he's back at the parent club, and he was a good player before, so that's a big deal and not something you had to purchase. David Machado off a good summer with Colombia, and then we'll see what Sarr ends up doing and how much he plays. Kevin Danso still there, good goalkeeper, and Brice Samba is very good, formerly of Nottingham Forest in Ligue 1. I don't know that I want to trust seeing the new type of manager situation, but you'll see that a lot of football clubs across France and across all of the top 5 European soccer leagues that are covered on the Betting Pitch podcast. Move next to Nice, worth nearly 200 million euros, and we're starting to get into lofty territory. They are, I mean, they've had some ups and downs. They looked really good. We're the longest unbeaten club in Ligue 1 last season in France, but ended up kind of nosediving towards the end of the season. They have Frank Heist, the manager formerly of Lens. That's where Will still just filled in for the club I just, I guess, gave up on or just finished talking about. In terms of what they've done for business-wise, they've sold 22 million euros, only brought in 9 million worth of expenses. They have sold Kefren Turam, one of the Turam families, to Juventus for 20.5 million euros. Jean-Claire Todibo is on a loan transfer at West Ham. Mattia Vitti, also on a loan at Empoli in Italy. And then in terms of what they've brought in, they've bought back Jonathan Klose, or no, he was at, I think Klose was at Marseille before, but I think he was at Lens before. So coming in to play for Frank Heiss again, or Heiss. Morgan Sanson, 4 million euros from Aston Villa, but he was already in play. And Tanguy Ndombele, wow, I haven't seen that name in a while, in on a free transfer from Tottenham. We'll see if he sticks at this club with much lower, I guess, level. Terra Mofi, we'll see him hopefully starting. Gaten Laborde as well playing a role, and Evan Gassond. I mean, they got a lot of strikers for sure. Diop as well, a good creator. Jeremy Boga as well. They got a lot of frontline attacking players, and defense is really what they were best at last year. I imagine Frank Hayes will bring his style to come in and push everyone forward and really press their opponents. Bulka still there, and goalkeeper. Donchi, as 40 years old, the captain still around. Good sign. We'll see if he sticks through the transfer market window. But Nice to me are interesting in top three finish, plus 450. That is a whole, I guess, plus 350 for Lens that we just talked about, and taking their manager is very interesting. Though Lens' home field advantage is certainly a lot better. Move next to Lille, 241 million euros, and they are in the Champions League playoff spots. So that could be certainly a change. I know they lost their manager in Paulo Fonseca. They have replaced him with, it's like, of course, struggled to load it, with Bruno Genesio, of course, who had, I think, been at Rennes last year, came in July 1st. They've sold $62 million worth of, or euros worth of players, only brought in 13, but that is what they do. And all of that was a sale of Lenny Yoro, young center back, who then got hurt as he signed the documents to move to Manchester United. Bruno Genesio, certainly known well across France. We'll see what they do with him. In terms of their purchases, this has always been a selling club. Lille are great at finding young talent. We have Saoui coming in for 8 million euros from SC Heerenveen in the Eredivisie in Holland. And then in Galayel Mukau, yeah, probably why a lot of people watch these is to see what's going on, from Mechelen in, I believe, in Dutch league as well. Thomas Meunier coming in from Trabzonspor. Wow, I haven't seen that name in a while. Aissa Mandi, free transfer from Villarreal, and Ethan Mbappe on a free transfer from Paris Saint-Germain under 19. I mean, that might be a grab. Anything in the Mbappe family certainly is worth it. And then some really old center back, right back players looking to try to probably add some depth there. Hopefully they're not starting, but maybe they need that experience. Jonathan David, Canadian international, pretty important up front. Mohamed Bayo, he is back after being loaned to Le Havre, was a purchase from Le Havre initially, or actually was from Clermont Foot, if I remember correctly. There's, I guess, some questions about what this team's going to look like, because seems like there's a lot still there, as well as Samuel Umtiti as well in. Wow. I guess we're trying to recover from knee surgery. We'll see how that goes. I guess trying to find ways to fill in for the loss of Lenny Yoro, who certainly was probably expected to leave. Lucas Chevalier is a French goalkeeper in the future. Still very good there, with Manone as well, formerly of Lorient. There's a lot of talent here. I wouldn't be too worried about that. They are potentially going to have to play Champions League, though, and we'll see if that goes well, though certainly French clubs trying to qualify for Champions League via playoffs have not worked out very well. 3-1 odds to finish in top three. I'm not really sure I'm entertaining any ideas for PSG to be dethroned, but it's interesting to see 3-1 odds on a team that might have to play in Champions League as well. We'll move next to the Stade Rennais. They're nearly 250 million euros. Lille, we're just 241. We're getting into lofty spots before we get to Paris Saint-Germain near 1 million euros. But Stade Rennais, another one of those selling clubs, known for really, really great at having very young talent. But then last season they were Not in that type of space. They were kind of getting older, and it didn't really work out very well. They've sold 75 million euros worth of players, only bought back 43. So we'll see how that ends up moving. Julien Stéphan is stuck around after 2023 midseason appointment, and he's had success in Ligue 1 in the past. I think mainly at, if I want to remember correctly, Strasbourg. But they sold Enzo Lefebvre to Roma for 23 million euros. After buying him from Lorient Montpellier, gone to Leverkusen for 20. Jean-Noël Belocian, a center back, to Leverkusen as well for 15. Mathis Ablin to Nantes for 10. Fabien Reder for 800,000 euros on loan to Stuttgart. In terms of their arrivals, they brought in Albert Kronbach, 15 million euros. That's a pretty big expenditure for them. From Bodo Glimt, Glenn Kamara from the Finn from Leeds United, Leo Ostigard from Napoli, which I think is a good purchase. I really like him. He looks like he was a great figure. Jordan James coming in from Birmingham City for 5 million euros. Hans Hateboer for 3 million from Atalanta. Surprised to see them move on from him, but they never really going to question the moves from Atalanta. Saburnet, I mean, they usually were a really young team that had great attacking talent. Arnaud Colimwendo certainly is one to think about there at 22 years old. Ludovic Blas, 26 million euros. Amin Gouiri, formerly of Lyon. Desiree Doué, as I've mentioned already on this podcast. Seems like they've fortified by bringing in Glenn Kamara to play center midfield. I feel like that's where a lot of these French teams try to get a little bit older. Right back, Hadeboer, certainly I'll trust anything moving out of Atalanta to continue to play. Christopher Wu, I've liked. Ostigard, as I already mentioned. So there's a lot of big names here. Arthur Theat, Belgian. I think he's playing left back in the Euros this summer. So there's some talent here. Steve Mandanda at 39 years old, would love for them to move on to a different goalkeeper. We'll see if that happens. I think most interesting thing about Stade Rennais is to finish top 3. They are 5-1 odds there outside of Nice, and at plus 450 Lens, 350 Lyon, 300 or Lille, excuse me, 300 we've already talked about, plus 300 3-1 odds. I mean, there's a logjam of teams that could be up near the top that might finish in the top 3, and then you got a big group just trying not to get relegated. So that'll be interesting, and probably will be decided by how many points you can get against PSG when you play PSG, and ultimately how badly you can beat the bad teams. We'll move next to Lyon, as I'm wearing their kit, or a version of it, I guess, the badge, to say the least. We're 263 million euros, and we're bottom of the table last season, went through like 3 or 4 managers, but we ended up finishing the year very, very well. And what they've done, they've spent 134 million euros. Wow. That's big money for Lyon, especially considering the rest of the league all selling more than they've bought. They sold, I guess, 24 million euros. So a net overall balance of minus or negative 110 million euros. That's a big deal. But we'll see what that turns into. Pierre Sage is their manager, appointed end of 2023. He stabilized. We'll see how well that goes. But in terms of departures, Jacob Bryan, the Irishman, to Everton. Joan Lepennant, as I already mentioned, on loan to Nantes, as well as Tino Cadawere. Skelly Alvaro, center midfield, to Werder Bremen for nearly 5 million euros. But they've bought Moussa Niakate from former captain of Mainz and was playing at Nottingham Forest, but not playing much. Ernest Nuamwa from a club I'd never seen before this logo. RWD Molenbeek, interesting, 29 million euros. Orel Mangala, who's on loan. They bought him from Nottingham Forest. Saeed Benrahma from West Ham, and then George Mikitadze, probably the biggest signing of them all, for nearly 19 million euros from Metz, who are going down to Ligue 2. I'm very interested in the Mikitadze signing. I wonder if he will play with Lacazette, because kind of they play the same position. Mikitadze may be a second striker. That does interest me a lot because Mikitadze played very well off of Kvaratskhelia, but he was more of a left winger. So we'll see what that lineup ends up looking like. And there's plenty of other names up top that look like names I've heard before. Alongside Ryan Cherky, hopefully he can get more playing time. Feel like Le Penant moving, though he's more of a defensive midfielder, doesn't make as much of a difference for Ryan Cherky's minutes. But seeing what he can do is probably a big deal. Corentin Tolisso, now 30 years old. Wow, didn't see that coming. Didn't realize he was that old. But that's something to say in midfield alongside Mangala, who looked like he was going to be something at Stuttgart, then moved to Nottingham Forest, and then moved back to probably a league that fits him a little bit better. Kakare, one of the best young midfielders, still 24. Matic as a kind of I guess, some sort of veteran leadership, 36. Big name, former player at Manchester United. Maitland-Niles coming in at right back, listed there. Don't know if he actually plays that or anything close to it, but Abner coming in from Real Betis as well. Tagliafico. Like, there's so many names in Lyon, plus Douye Seletar from Southampton, from Olympique Marseille before. I'm sure he'll get booed like crazy. And I thought Anthony Lopez was leaving, their goalkeeper, but we'll see what happens there. It doesn't look like he's moved officially just yet. A lot of talent there. Imagine they start the year off and are motivated to start it a lot better this season. 3-1 odds to finish in the log jam of top 3 is very interesting, but we'll be in certainly a much easier position not having European things to worry about this season, European teams. We'll move to Olympique de Marseille, near 300 million euros, and a club I really wanted to see because I'm making a French trip in just the end of this month, but unfortunately I am not going to be there during the league action. So sad. But Marseille, they have spent 84.5 million euros, and then sold 76, so pretty close to even. Also brought in Roberto Zerbi from Brighton Hove Albion, and his European campaign in the English Premier League, formerly of Sassuolo, who've been relegated to Serie B. Very sad in Italy. Departures, they sold Guendouzi for 13 million euros to Lazio, but he was already there. And Dye to Everton, though he was on loan, I think, somewhere else. No, he was not. He was starting for them last year. My bad. That's to Everton. Ismail Lassar to Crystal Palace for 15 million euros. Vitinha to Genoa, as they're looking to fill the Retegui and maybe the Albert Gudmundsson roles. Jonathan Klaus also as well to Nice for 5 million euros. That's a lot of business and a lot of players that were playing for them in various roles, but Guendouzi, the only one that was actually somewhere else. In terms of what they bought, Eli Wahi from Lens, 25 million euros. Mason Greenwood in for Manchester United via Getafe. Hopefully not doing sexual assaults anymore. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg from loaned in from Tottenham. Valentin Carboni, I guess, younger player from Inter Milan. Ismail Kone, center midfielder from Watford for 12 million euros. So they've done a lot of business. That's refreshing. It seems like Lyon and Marseille have certainly been spending. We'll see what that looks like. Greenwood was so good for Getafe last year after basically being banned for a season. We'll see what that ends up looking like. Marseille are going to have a ton of expectations, but I think I would believe that they will live up to maybe a portion of them. Certainly not as far up as they look for, but team's good. Got a big crowd behind them. I see Mbemba still around, Gigot as well, and of course Pau Lopez in goal. So should be a pretty good team, and we'll see what they look like. They are currently plus 150 to finish top 3. But we'll be having to handle a very, very busy European. Just kidding. They finished 8th last year, so that's another reason for them to finish in the top 3, is they only have Ligue 1 and the Coupe de France to worry about. That's a big deal when when Lyon, Nice, Lille, Stade Brestois potentially being relegated, and Monaco all have big European commitments alongside PSG. Move last to, before we get to PSG, with Association Sportive de Monaco. I will be in Monaco hopefully in less than a month if everything goes according to plan. They're worth nearly just over 376 million euros. Big money, but not a surprise. Former club of Kylian Mbappe. Income, they've sold 22.5 million euros worth of players and spent nearly 61 million. So that's refreshing. That's another big spenders. They're not in the par of Lyon, but it seems like the top of Lyon is spending. Everyone else is selling, and that's like how European soccer seems to go. In terms of what they've actually sold, Mohamed Kamara has gone to a logo I don't recognize, probably somewhere in the oil money land. They also have George Ilenikena coming in from a Belgian side. Other names on the sell list, I don't really know if it says Wissam Ben Yedder, but he doesn't seem to be with the club at this point. Mavisa coming in from Toulouse. Like I said, George Ilanikena from Antwerp for 19 million euros. Malvisa from nearly 16. Lamine Camara from Metz at 15. He was playing in the African Cup of Nations last year. Thilo Kehrer coming in from West Ham, was playing for them last year. All are interesting purchases. The names we know. So much talent in this team. We'll see if they can kind of harness it, because they have a lot of good buys. I think they've been good at that, but really need to figure out their goalkeeper position, as Philip Cohn was so bad last year for them. And last but not least, Monaco, I guess, are in a little bit different of a situation as well. They will be in Champions League, so that's going to be a concern. Last we'll go to is Paris Saint-Germain, and I'll mention Monaco, 2-1 odds to finish top three. Don't see them getting relegated as one of the halves in this league, but I do think that Champions League will complicate things quite a bit. Paris Saint-Germain, I'll make this quick because they are big favorites to win the league. They are minus 1,500 to finish top three, so 1,500 euros would win, or American dollars. Wow, I've been talking about euros so much. It's late, my bad, 2:11 a.m. now, local. Big number, but to win, I guess there are lines even out there without PSG to win the entire league, all of France, be French champions. PSG currently minus 350, and that number has not moved. So $350 to win 100, that they will be champions of Ligue 1 yet again. There will be no upset. But I like PSG, but more, I think they're never going to be an underdog in this competition. The few times I think that they were, I did bet them last year, even playing their bad players, and I think it went fairly well. I think they had a big lead that they collapsed. But Luis Enrique returns. They're going to try to possess the ball. That's going to be hard for a lot of teams, but might keep worse teams in the game. In terms of income, only 17 million euros or so, because Kylian Mbappe left on a free. Spent around 120 million euros. That's big money. They did sell Hugo Ekitike to Eintracht Frankfurt. That deal was finished last season. They've loaned out Renato Sanchez, Cher Endur. That's the name, about the end of the names I know. They did buy Joao Neves from Benfica, William Pacho from Eintracht Frankfurt, and a goalkeeper named Matvey Savinov from Ludogorets. So that looks like a purchase potentially for the future, or excuse me, from Krasnodar. I think that's in Russia, I want to say. But team's going to be really good. They're not going to be a team I want to mess with too much, and I think I'm going to try to do as much as I can not to get in the way of the best teams in Europe this season, at least not on a weekly basis. Look for them in Europe potentially, but not so much in their domestic leagues. It's now end of the podcast. I could probably go through some other numbers that might be of interest, like I'm doing on the last ones, and then get to an ultimate best bet, so we can, I don't know, upload this thing. So it'll be up here for plenty of you to listen to tomorrow morning on Thursday, August 15th, though technically it's not even tomorrow anymore. I'll run through, I guess, the odds to win the whole thing. PSG minus 350, Marseille down to 10-1, Monaco 14-1, Lille 25, Lyon 25, Lens 40, Nice 40, and Nice had, and then Rennes at 50-1, and then it gets really out of hand with Brest 100-1 and having to balance Champions League. I don't love that, I'll put it that way. But in terms of the teams that have European commitments or that do not have, I think there's some value potentially on Lens 40-1, but it's probably more in the finish in the top three. Also Marseille, I'll get to that in just a second. In terms of, let's see, winning without PSG, so I'd be essentially coming in second place, or just finishing ahead of everybody else ahead of the field. Marseille at 3-1 odds, Monaco 325. I don't love Monaco. Champions League is certainly much better than playing Europa League or Europa Conference League, but Lens and Marseille, I think, are the teams to look there. 3-1 odds for Marseille, and Lens are 8-1. But Marseille have a long way to go, considering they finished 8th last year, and it was known that they were not having a good year, and trying to balance Europe just didn't really work very well for the club. To be relegated, I think that's a very interesting spot to be. We have Angers at plus 140, considering how low in squad value they have been, the financial issues they've had in the past. 27 million euros, excuse me, 27,000 would be interesting, but 27 million euros as a squad value is extremely low, even considering the problems that French clubs have had. Angers are third on the list, so we'll go in order. Angers plus 140, Le Havre 175, with basically a double valuation of Angers And compared to Auxerre, nearly double. Auxerre, though, winners of Ligue 2 last season. And that usually, I think, does correspond pretty well to performance in the top division. Winning the second division, I think, does bode well. But I don't know, like big gaps there, unfortunately. Auxerre are plus 185 to be relegated. Saint Etienne 2-1 odds to be relegated. Move next to let's see, Nantes plus 275, but I feel pretty comfortable with them. Strasbourg plus 275, they got too much money. Montpellier at 5-1 is not a crazy shout, especially if their attacking players get very old and their defense continues to struggle, though they did bring a defensive manager, and I feel like they're probably moving in that direction. Toulouse plus 650, Sabre-Soir 10-1, I think is probably worth looking toward. It's not really a high probability that it'll actually hit, but I think there's a good chance they really struggle with the Champions League. And so maybe they'll be a team I look to bet against with the Champions League respect or knowledge or expectations. Potentially losing and dropping a lot of home games or even road games as a road favorite. That certainly will be something to look for. Rems at 10-1 odds. I don't really think that, I mean, losing will still is a big deal, but I don't know if that really matters. So I guess I'll probably leave it there and get to an ultimate best bet. Before I do that, I want to make sure to plug other episodes I'm going to be doing this week. I will be doing a Bundesliga episode before the the DFB Pokal starts, but I'm not as rushing to do that as I'll be doing a already done La Liga. Serie A starts on Saturday, so I'll be getting an episode of that in Serie A in Italy. Of course, La Liga and English Premier League are already out there. We'll be doing a Champions League coming up before that competition begins, but we'll also be focused on qualifications for those sort of things, as that will be occurring during the first couple of weeks of the European season. It's here. It's awesome. I'm so pumped that we have something here for the leagues. I mean, I was hoping that it would start next week, but we're cramming it in. And thank you all for subscribing on YouTube at @the_real_G Warner, following on at @the_real_G Warner on Instagram. If you want the 1-minute versions of this, I'll be sticking to that, putting out reels every week, every episode. Ideally, there'll be a reel for it. So trying to push up that game as much as possible and try to see if that is a potential way to get this podcast to grow. Of course, we will be Tuesday night podcasts with throughout the rest of the baseball season at A Brooks Bets. We might change that a little bit for the playoffs, depending on how it looks. But NFL podcasts expect to come out that same night with A_Schnicker. Had a great year, closed the playoffs last year. Going to try to do that again this season. I think other than that, other things I need to plug, of course, still with pregame. And if you're not a member of my Patreon, check that out, patreon.com. So that's @the_real_G Warner. Great spot to get all my leans, write-ups, all those sort of things across all sports. Get it all in one place for a very, very modest price. And you can download the app, turn on notifications, and you get a buzz every time I lock something in. So that might be a really good way to make sure you're getting the same stuff I am getting and playing alongside with me on this whole journey to hopefully riches, plus some stock tips in there as well. It's time to get in for the ultimate best bet show portion of the show. So let's get into it right now. Hey, this is the @the_real_G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch, the Ligue 1 season preview. Recording this in the wee hours, but season starting very soon. Want to get you a best bet out there so you can follow along French league as long as I can. Yes, there's a lot of dismay or call it the Farmers League, but it's a very good league with a lot of good talent. A lot of players, young players, before they end up moving on to big clubs across Europe. So it's definitely worth paying attention to. And of course, if you have a bet on it, why not? If you're not a member of Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/@the_real_G Warner. And of course, check us out on YouTube at @the_real_G Warner, on Instagram at @the_real_G Warner, and Betting the Pitch across all your podcast platforms. Man, it's late. For my best bet in French League, I'm going to go with Angers plus 140 to be relegated. Lowest valued team on transfer market. Have had really big financial problems. We're able to get promoted to Ligue 1 last season, but I think they're going back to Ligue 2 next year. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, @real_G Warner. Thanks for following along and putting up with a real late night episode. But I will see you all very, very soon on the Serie A episode and a Bundesliga episode before this weekend gets done. Plus Major League Baseball with @SportsNerd824 Munaf Manji on the pregame.com podcast network. See you all very soon. Thank you for the support. And it's time to go to bed.